In this week's pod, we were joined by Andrew Langridge to discuss cash? Can't even say cash. What's going on? And carbon counting machine and professional shenanigans. Andrew is the director of the Sterling DCS Academic Access Program, where he oversees sales and implementation efforts to provide educational institutions with access to cutting-edge technologies and resources.
In addition to his professional roles, Andrew is a visiting professor at the University of Bath and a visiting fellow at the Cranfield University, sharing his industry experience and expertise with the next generation of engineers and researchers. He is also a fellow of the ACOSD and a prestigious organization dedicated to advancing manufacturing and engineering excellence, as well as project controls too. It was a fascinating episode. We haven't spoken about carbon in some time. It feels like AI washing's done everything right these days. It's all about AI, data, machine learning, yada yada yada. But it was good to get back to estimating carbon, what that actually means, the impact on projects. It was good to kick the tires with Andy on those topics. Martin, what stood out for you?
Yeah, I really liked his views around just some of the why we need to report on carbon first and foremost. He thinks legislation's a big factor, or similar in the way that HSE health and safety reporting has really turned a corner since the 80s. It's fantastic now, the data you see on projects. And just, his passion for educating the next generation about carbon. He gave a few examples there. How about you, Val? What were your main takeaways?
Nothing really. No, just joking. I think the idea that carbon is not the enemy and that it should be, factored into not just the top down but the bottom up. I really like that. And educating the next generation was a good one. We talked about that for a little bit. Then we got stuck into the AI, and I won't give away too much, but there was a lot of fun back and forth talking about how AI might shape the future for us in particular roles.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun, even though we had the fun police back. Val, it was good to have you back as well in the pod. It's been a couple. But folks, we won't spoil too much for you. Have a listen. Let us know what you think. Make your own mind up. But as we say, keep listening, keep liking, and keep paying it forward.
Hello, project people. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Project Chatter podcast, your number one source of project experts, but you may change your mind after this episode. I've got a full house today. It is the fun police, Dale and Martin. How are you guys?
Yeah, it's good, Val. Good to have you back. It feels like it's been forever, probably about a couple of months now. But yeah, glad the fun police is back. We were actually having a lot of fun, Martin, weren't we, without him? And now he's here to spoil it all.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. I was looking forward to seeing his dodgy internet, but now he's got 100 meg fiber now, which is revolutionary for him.
I might have to sit back and have a hibiscus and lychee beer or something, Martin. But let's bring our guest in, Andrew Langridge, my friend. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, thank you. Very, very good to see the three of you having a lot of fun and bringing some really cool stuff so people can learn what's going on in the bigger world. So yeah, good to be here. Thank you. I've been waiting a long time to come on, so thank you very much.
Have you? Oh, that's great. Well, what an honor. It's great to have you actually, because I think we need to break up some of the AI conversations with something a little bit more meaningful and dust off a few other conversations. And we were talking just offline about a few things, and I'm already having a laugh about what I might ask you, Andrew. But to get into it, mate, how did you get into projects? Because I know that's a great starter for us, and it'll just wet the whistle for the listeners.
Well, I've never really got into projects, so that's probably my first confession. I was a mechanical engineer. I did a mechanical engineering apprenticeship, 4-year apprenticeship, making stuff. And it was just at the time when computer-controlled machinery was becoming more prevalent. And at 22, I was leading an advanced manufacturing team, believe it or not. These days, it would be the really old rubbish that you'd probably throw out to the tip. But in those days, we were at the cutting edge of what we were doing. And part of what we had to do was estimate how much things would cost with the new ways of manufacturing. So I got really, really into estimating and planning for manufacturing. And planning factory moves is not that much different from planning asset delivery. It's very similar. In fact, a part of asset delivery is the fit out and making sure everything works. So that's how I got into that. And I've been estimating ever since. I've become a bit of an estimating geek or nerd, whatever you want to call it. And that's how I ended up here, really. So that's it. Just really by chance, I was at the right place at the right time to get a break, really.
So I'm going to ask you, because we're just talking about what's interesting. What is interesting about that for you? What gets you out of bed when it comes to estimation?
Oh, we're rubbish at it. We're absolutely hopeless at it. And the more I learn, the more I realize that we're hopeless at it. It's really tough. It's really, really hard to do estimating or be a QS or be an estimator. It's really challenging. And what I learned early on was the first number that you give somebody. Okay, the first number you give someone is normally when you know the least about the project and the scope is the least mature. And they ask you to give them a number to 4 significant figures on £1 billion. And when you give them that number, they then hang you by that. They then change the whole project, add lots of scope that you didn't expect, and make it more complex than it ever should have been. But they still hang you on the first number, and it's how we educate. I love the way we have to educate our seniors to understand that actually at the early stages, this is a range. This is the range you're going to play in, and then you get into the mathematics of ranges and sets and data sets and how do you justify an evidence. So that it's probably a bit geeky, really. I mean, it's not spreadsheets. That's what I love about estimating. It's not spreadsheets. It's about thinking about what you're trying to deliver.
Why are we so bad, Andrew? Just to spitball here, or not that you might know, but from your perspective.
No, from my perspective, we've forgotten how to estimate. We want to do so. Estimation is one of the few times in your project that you originate something from. You are the originator of a set of data that didn't exist before you started. And some research we did at university a few years ago was for every pound we spend on an SAP or an Oracle system, we spend 50p on engineering design software, so stress analysis, CAD, and we spend 10 pence on planning software, which is good, and we spend a penny on estimating software. And yet the estimating is where all the numbers come from that everything else sits on. The most prevalent estimating tool at the moment is Excel, and it's completely unauditable and completely unmanageable. That's why we're so rubbish at it. We don't like being constrained to a system.
That's really interesting, because is it well, I mean, there's nothing stopping the 4 of us going out tomorrow, right, and creating an estimating tool. But is that going to improve, or any of our listeners for that matter?
I'm laughing because we've just spent 4 years writing a brand new estimating tool, and
Perfect.
it was hell. It was absolute hell.
Is it in
the
Excel?
amount of midnights we spent up. No, it should have been. No, we should have written about Excel. Have been done in a week. But no, it's not. It's a SaaS tool. It's the first SaaS software tool that's been derived ever, and it does cost in carbon, and it's got all the auditability features, all the security you'd expect. But writing good software is hard, and I just laugh because I just come out the other side of writing a system well, I didn't write it at all, by the way. That's a lie. Our development team wrote it, but to spec out a tool and get someone else to write what you thought you told them to write is very, very challenging. So
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, but you can do it, by the way, Val. You're absolutely right. You could go and do it, no problem.
Yeah, but we're going to get on a few topics here, and I think AI will sneak its way in. For most listeners, they're probably sick of hearing about it, but it will. So you mentioned carbon there. So one of the things I think is actually very interesting, and I'm talking from an Australia perspective, is that the conversation around carbon and construction are starting to become synonymous with each other. Now, that's a conversation. But Andrew, with regards to decarbonisation, because we know we want to get in this subject matter, how do we make this real? I know there's a few groups around that I'm personally involved in, and we're even on the podcast where we're raising awareness with Zero Construct. One of the challenges is when we introduce new metrics to projects, and as you said, when we can't even get the fundamental ones right, we're just adding another clip to our scoreboard, if you like. How do we get to a point where it's not just a good idea, but it's business as usual, from your perspective?
I think that's. I don't think we can rely on any government to legislate. I don't think that's going to happen for a couple of years. I think eventually they will have to, but I think at the moment, with the way the economies are in every country, I think that would be quite challenging for them. They know they need to, and they know they ought to, but I think the honest truth is that they can't afford to. That would be quite challenging for them. We need to start at the grassroots. We need to encourage the supply chain to create really good information sets around their products. That would really help. So, if you look at the health and safety information since the 80s when that became a legal requirement, the health and safety data on products is fantastic. I mean, it really is. The whole industry has done an amazing job to bring that together. We need the same kind of thing to happen for carbon. The challenge I see as an estimator is most of us early doors estimates have to be done at unit rate level. We can't afford, well, we don't have the detail to go and do a detailed estimate. We can't afford it. And we've built up banks of, I mean, I've got my little black book in my desk drawer here of unit rates for several different types of projects, bridges and roads and things. And I know they're relatively reliable. If I update them with the forecast and indexes, I can use the numbers too. It's relatively good. That doesn't exist for carbon. So we've got to find a way of making these numbers exist for carbon quickly for people to start using and to trust them. There is some challenges in the professional indemnity insurance world that to insure yourself to give robust carbon, become a robust carbon advisory, it's quite challenging, and there's lots of caveats that need to go along with every piece of advice you give. But we've just got to suck that up, and we've got to encourage the OEMs, the manufacturers, to give us what we need to start building these data sets over the next couple of years. And I know you mentioned AI, and I know we're going to come to it later on, but that's a great job for AI to do. Go and hoover up all the manufacturers' data and turn it into some sensible numbers. We've got to make sure the manufacturers give us the numbers in a way that are consumable. So at the moment, I'm working with a government in European government because all of their manufacturers, like brickwork, blockwork, they've done the carbon in meters cubed. Right? But nobody I know builds a wall in meters cubed. They either do it in meters squared or they do it in 500 bricks, have 1,000 bricks. So we've had to write our own algorithms. They're not AI. They're just a bunch of machine learning algorithms that now takes these, consumes these, and turns them into what I call useful estimating values. So we're doing that for industry already. We've got about 22,000 base products now done, and the machine now is running pretty quick, so that will soon fill up. But it was a challenge to work out the algorithm to take any measure and turn it into a useful estimating measure. That was quite interesting. We have a team of, it's not me. We have a team of data scientists to go and do that for us. And well, we just need to build on what we're doing. We've had 27 COPs or 28 COPs, and we're still talking about where's the data. So we can't estimate without data.
It's a hell of an interesting topic, Andy, because estimating as a profession, QSing, carbon as a topic. You brought in machine learning, AI then, so we'll park that one for a little bit
Just for
later.
the
But
time
if we combine estimating and carbon, and if we're talking predominantly to the audience that we know listen, which is in the built environment projects, predominantly construction type projects.
Mm-hmm.
We had Owen Condren on last season, episode 170, and he gave us some amazing stats on the extortionate amount of carbon, the extortionate amount of the biggest contributor to carbon on projects is concrete.
Yeah.
The biggest contributor to carbon in concrete is cement. The
Yeah.
biggest contributor to carbon in cement is clinker.
Yeah.
And so if we get down to the heart of it, there's one ingredient, limestone, that
Mhm.
really gives us all of our carbon. And so we went into how actually if you forget about trying at the outset, trying to, I guess, look at the emissions and trying to control that, if you look at the source of the problem, the root cause, and look at clinker and how we can improve on the way we either replace clinker in cement or perhaps ways in which we substitute clinker in to cement, perhaps we don't need to count carbon.
I think right. I think that's we can't have there's no silver bullet. Okay. And I think what you just said is really interesting and needs to be explored. And we need to find funding to fund people to go and explore this stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a project that came out of Cambridge last week or the week before where they can they can crush cement and reuse it. And using the same technology that we're using in the arc furnaces to make iron, they can return that into concrete. It takes a lot of energy at the moment, but actually from a carbon origination, it's very low. The other worry I have is that carbon isn't the enemy. Okay, carbon's not the enemy. It's the way we use carbon's the enemy. Okay, so concrete, from my mind, is not a bad material. Okay,
It's a
if
great
you put
material.
if you put concrete into an asset and it sits there for 70 years, it's actually very carbon efficient because you don't have to do much to maintain it. You don't have to do much to do it. So what our problem is not that we need to get rid of these. I hear people say, "Oh, concrete's enemy." No, 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 concrete's fine. What does it look through the life cycle? What is if I don't have to repair it and maintain it and do anything else, actually, if you have it for 70 years, it's a very low carbon solution in its full life carbon. Okay. The challenge we've had so far is that just getting people to do the capital carbon is really challenging. And that's where all the big carbon numbers come from for concrete and for steel. And I mean, there's the big five: concrete, steel, aluminium, glass, and the other one is wood, which people talk about. They're the big five. But actually, of all of them, concrete and steel, as long as you look at the life cycle and as long as you use them smartly, as long as you build smart structures, okay, you haven't got a carbon problem. Okay, do we want to get rid of carbon in concrete? Of course we do. That's the other theme. I'm saying there's multiple swim lanes that we've got to work down. But the first thing is to measure. And the first way of measuring is to estimate. And the first way we've got to estimate is with some basic fundamental knowledge about what we're trying to estimate. But I think there's no one solution.
So if we go down that rabbit hole, actually, so some people listening to this episode will never have heard of estimating as a practice or profession or a role. What are the basics? You talk about the basic fundamentals of estimating. What is it? Because before carbon, it wasn't just carbon that you're estimating. What else is it? Where does it come from? Where does it originate from?
It's the other way around. So the Romans were amazing at doing estimates, by the way. They would estimate everything, and they had ledgers that told you the value and cost of everything. And when they built one or two of the same vessel, they could tell you in units what the next one was going to cost. And if you build it in a different country, they could tell you what the factor to get it into that country's economy was. They were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. But everyone, again, I'm probably as guilty as everyone else. Estimating fundamentally is really simple. I need to know what resources I'm going to consume to deliver the asset. End of story. That's it. That's simple. ABC. I need to know what I'm going to take and put into the asset. Bang. Now, if you look at it fundamentally at that level, when we're doing project controls, we need to know what's gone into the asset. So hang on, all of a sudden we've got a beautiful marriage here. Hang on. We've got a thing that actually self-regulates. And then when we find out what actually went into the asset and they can tell us that, we can go and improve our estimation. Okay, so estimation is purely resource consumption to deliver something, and that's materials, people, plant, anything that you have to do to deliver that. So that's the simplest way of thinking about it. We've made it far too complex. We talk about cost estimation. No one estimates cost. We estimate resources. Now, how does that help us? Well, if we're estimating resources to get the cost, and we bolt on the carbon, so we have a cost value for some material, and we bolt on the appropriate carbon value for that material, as we generate our resource consumption for generating our cost values, it generates our carbon values at the same time, at no extra cost to us, at no extra effort to us, at no extra anything to us. What we then do with those numbers is really interesting, because money is flexible, money is squishy. If Dale and I quote Martin for the same brick wall that we're going to build, Dale obviously more expensive because he's better at doing this kind of stuff than I would be. So you can have it, low quality and cheap and quick, or you can have it high quality and expensive. Carbon isn't squishy. Carbon is carbon. If Dale and I buy the same grade of material from the same manufacturer, even if we're buying different volume sets, which would affect the cost, doesn't affect the carbon. One of the things I'm trying to set up with a few industry friends and the Association of Cost Engineers is an open carbon database that everyone can share, because it's not competitive data. It's not competitive information. There's no competitive advantage of knowing the carbon in a cubic meter of concrete. None at all. It is what it is. So yeah, that's so resource consumption. Resource consumption is what we want to measure, and if we measure that, we get everything. So not only can we get carbon, we can get acidification, we can get sulfur from fuel going on vessels, we can get hydrogen, we get anything that you can tell me what that particular material holds of that particular thing you want to estimate. We can do with the same algorithms, with the same everything. So this is why I see it as an evolution of the QS, an evolution of the estimator. We don't need a whole different breed of people to do these estimates. We need to give our brilliant QSs and our brilliant estimators the numbers that they need. That's all we need to do. So it's not hard. It's not rocket science. That's completely something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, I think Machine Gun Martin hasn't been given a license in a while, Andy. So, he's been drinking this rancid lychee and whatever botanical gardens
it's
beer. So,
giving
I
me
think he's
indigestion.
Yeah,
He's
definitely
loaded.
have better. So to link into the theme of estimating, how do we estimate the time impact of some of these things? So it seems like we got some quite good data on unit prices, but we all know projects get delayed, and most of the prolongation is where the overrun is. It's almost the people cost as well as the actual cost of doing the job. It's paying for the office staff, the extra materials. How does that factor in, and where do you see this going?
That's a great question. That's a great question, because at the moment no one bothers to do the carbonization of the people. It's too hard. If I could do materials and plant, I would be happy, right? So, but you're right. If the people don't realize, if your job overruns and I have to leave the porter cabins there, and I have to leave the bonded store there, and I've got to leave the plant on site, I've got to run the generators to run the lighting system and security cameras, that's all carbon. And that's why I said the estimation is not just for the capital, estimation is for life. Every time you see a change, if the program changes, you need to see if there's a cost and carbon impact. And we don't do that. We just, we just have a change and we hide behind contracts and carry on. But realistically, you're right, man. Everything changes. If it's length of the project, we have a lot more. So, and that's what we got to be careful with these materials. So some of the new materials take longer to cure on site. So your program extends. So then people don't balance that carbon with what they've saved in the material set. So the whole thing is, I think through life and through program is very important. I think that's a very, very good point, Martin. Very interesting.
But is it something that you think can be done? Because it seems like we do have the data to actually, we've got the technical data, as you're kind of saying. You've built your own. I don't want to say database because it's way more than that, but range of estimates from based on project history. But yeah, it seems something fairly simple where we can, dare I say, use some machine learning and implement it.
Our tool is not based on historic projects. Our tool is based on resources. It's right down at the resource-based level. You can build in the other stuff if you wish to. But this is exactly, so what should happen in a program, in my opinion, one of the good points about machine learning is if it sees anything change, if it sees a change, if I could get people to do change properly, this would really help. If it sees a change, it should spark off a whole series of workflows going, what's it done to my plan? What if the plan's changed? What's it done to my estimate? And if the estimates change, what's it done to my overall profitability or loss or budget? I mean, this is one of the great uses of machine learning engines to do that. And the more projects you run them on, the more they'll learn to look for certain signs and certain specific things. But yeah, a change should trigger a cost and plan review. It should change an estimate. And these days, not a cost even. It should change an estimate and a plan review. If you update the plan, you should update the estimate. If you update the estimate, you should update the plan. And we don't do that. None of us do that.
Well, on the theme of carbon tracking, you mentioned earlier there isn't the sort of drive from government to really measure this kind of stuff like it was for health and safety data, and all the projects that we, the three of us, have been on for. Sorry, the health and safety data is brilliant. It's always the first thing in the meeting. Everything's there. Do you think we'll ever get to a place where it will become forced? Because surely that's the only way to get there. I understand there's pressures on the governments around the world. There's financial constraints, but if we're relying on businesses just to do it themselves, probably not going to happen. Do you think that's the only way forward? Are there any countries around the world that are doing this well, or any kind of good examples?
Denmark is doing fantastically well, but they've legislated. They have legislated, and they are doing amazingly well. But it will take legislation. All I'm saying is I don't think you're going to see it for the next 18 months or so. You will take legislation. And UK, from a global pollution perspective, UK is actually not even in the top 100 countries. We're quite low down. We're quite good. But we have the economy to pay to develop these low carbon concretes, these new ways of working, the modern methods of delivering assets. We can afford to develop those and give them to the other countries so that they can bring their carbon down much quicker than they think they can. So yeah, we will need legislation, Martin. There's no doubt.
Are there any projects within the UK that are doing this well? Like I've seen some where they are measuring it. They're starting to measure it. They've even got their own carbon budget. But are there any kind of good examples that you could give in the UK?
Brilliant. Yeah, there are centres of absolute excellence. There are people that have invested. I mean, all of the big consultancy firms are getting there. So, your Mott McDonald's, your Turner Townsend, they're all really trying very, very hard to bring this in on projects, and they're doing a great job. I mean, they are certainly trying their best. I have small QS practices of 10 people that are doing it and telling their clients, even if their clients don't want to know the carbon values, they're telling them anyway, because they think they should. So there are some absolute brilliant people doing some brilliant stuff. I mean, most of the carbon stuff I learned was from a lady called Dr. Kat Evertson, that now works at WSP. She's phenomenal. Anyone who works for Kat is going to get a really good education, and she's driving industry to be better. So there are people that are doing it, but when you've got hard times and you've let people go and everyone's got 3 jobs to do, if you don't have the tool set and the data to make it easy, like I've been saying, it's easy. But if you don't have that tool set and the data, then you're not going to take that cost on, not in the current climate. And if it's not legislative, you're not going to do it. But there are centers of excellence. I have to say there are some people doing some brilliant stuff.
Very interesting. I was just thinking as well. I was just pondering while you were answering that question around making it a contribution by all. So when we do get people into projects, one of the challenges I think we have is education. And you just touched on a really good point, is that when it came through, like all the disciplines. First, it came top down in most projects, right? It was mandated as, and I'm just talking about projects that I've been involved in, as a form of KPI, and so it went through the C-suite and kind of a trickle down economic in terms of measuring carbon and other various other levers in projects. But the discipline of making carbon part of your role in projects hasn't happened yet, right? And I'm just curious in your take on how do you get everyone to contribute? Because if it's a nominal number, no one's going to really make it real in their day-to-day lives. But if you make it part of their education, you make it part of their role, you make it, you give them the why. Why them? So what? Answer all those questions, and then how they're contributing to that number. Then I think you would have a more of a sticky point. Do you agree, Andrew, or what's your point on that?
I absolutely fundamentally agree. So Sterling, the company I'm a director of, we've taken a bit of a stand on this particular problem. I think there's a lot of people my age, let's put it out there, old white guy, bald head. A lot of people my age really don't give a monkeys. They just don't care. They've seen it all before. This is a fad. This is a fad. It's going to come and it's going to go and it'll be fine. And don't worry about it. So we've actually started the other end. We are working with many, many, many universities in the UK, and we are putting Sterling into their coursework. So I'm a visiting professor at the University of Bath. I'm very lucky to Sterling let me go there many, many days of the year when I should be working. They let me go and play. But we just had 100 kids, 100 young adults. So we had just 113 young adults, all in their second year at university, doing a bridge. They did the bridge design, and then they did a cost of carbon estimate for their bridge. And all of them finished the estimate, and all of them not only did the numbers relatively well, they did really, really good, but they also built a beautiful basis of estimate using, all the assumptive numbers that you need to do everything. And they had 2 hours training and me shouting at them for 4 hours as a site agent. And that was it. That's all they got. They've built these amazing. So we're doing that. We think by 2 years' time, we'll have about 1,200 kids a year going into industry who understand carbon's important. They're not sustainability experts. They're estimators and QSs and practitioners and project managers. Believe it or not, we're teaching project managers to understand how this comes along and this goes in. So I think the only way to do it is to get the younger generation and to teach them why it's important, so that when they get out into industry, they already have that idea. And I used to work for Aries before I joined Sterling. I used to work for Aries, project controls, Prism project controls system. And we built our carbon reporting into that 5 years ago. And when I left 2 years ago, nearly, no one had bought that particular module. So it was there, and you could do it, and it was. In fact, you didn't even have to buy it. It was just an extension to the monthly reporting cycle. No one did it, and yet we put that in 3 years ago, thinking that it would be a great idea. So I think we've got to get the kids young. We've got to bring them through. We've got to give them all the support we can give them. And, as they come through and get into positions of power, 5 years' time, we will be doing this. This will be our norm. I like what you said, Val. This is not different or new. This will be our norm. This will be business as usual. We won't even think about it. We will just have business as usual. I think that's a lovely way of thinking about it.
Well, I wonder, because I think about projects pretty much all day now. And on the podcast, we talk to so many different people about the mechanisms for incentives, right? And how do you get people motivated? And there's the carrot stick kind of concept that one of the challenges we have on projects is contracts and how the contracts are negotiated, but then how they're mechanized in project delivery, right? They become very, very ordinary if they're not written properly and they're not supported. Now, the UK has the NEC framework, which can and cannot be useful. But I was just thinking from a carbon perspective, is there a way to incentivize in the contract as a mechanism in terms of pain and gain? For example, if you, almost like an unlocking, if you gamify it to some degree, if you are ahead of schedule, or if you're on time, or if you meet the carbon targets, then you get this additional contingency of funds or profit or whatever the split share of goods would be. Have you thought about that, Andrew?
Yeah, we should treat it exactly like any other KPI, and it should be part of the pain sharing. The challenge is this at the moment, and I'm trying to write a paper at the moment on carbon risk, is that if the asset is taking more money or more time and more money than we expected, we have to go and find some money from somewhere, and it comes either out of our profits or it comes out of the client's funds. Okay, if we overrun the carbon, we can't just go and get rid of it. We have to then fund sequestration or carbon offset. And who owns that burden at the moment is the client. And I wonder if what you're saying is, how can we make that pain be shared across the whole supply chain? It should be shared across everyone. I think that needs someone far better at contracts than me to kind of, but it needs to happen. It needs to happen. But I say, just for carbon, the only way it's different from money is that it's not squishy. Carbon is carbon is carbon. If you have it in your project, you can't just take some profits from someone else and pay it. You then have to worry about, how am I going to deal with that carbon value that I didn't expect to have, and then we get into things like greenwashing and people trying to play the games with it. And someone said to me the other day, and I thought they got it wrong. I said, well, the biggest incentive is there's no planet B. And I said, no, you mean plan B? They went, no, I mean planet B. How much of an incentive do you need to get this right, guys? I mean, for goodness sake. I'm not a tree hugger warrior, by the way, but even I can see that there is no other planet to go to if we ruin this one.
Just purely out of interest, let's say there's a project review on this date in 2044.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that will be on the same? We'll be talking about carbon in the same way as we do budget, as we do progress against budget schedule. Do you think that will be at the same level? You think it will happen?
Absolutely, has to happen. If you don't,
it has to happen. But do you think it will happen?
Yes, I do think.
You just think there'll be a momentum.
There will be legislation eventually. There has to be, and then
even though countries are skint.
Yeah,
even though projects are overrunning.
Yes, it has to happen, because it shouldn't affect the cost of the project. Okay, it only affects the cost of the project if you under budget your carbon. So if you win the job by under budgeting your carbon, and then you end up with this big carbon mass that you've got to deal with, your project will overrun on its budget. But as long as you set a decent carbon budget, it doesn't affect your cost. It should have equality and parity at our project meetings, at our milestone meetings. Okay, and we know we're going to get it wrong because we get cost wrong, but let's start. Don't let perfection ruin the good. Let's get going. We've had 50 years to try and get cost right in project controls. Let's just get started. Let's go.
So are we going to turn the iron triangle into a square now and add a
Yeah, I think it's going to be like a golf ball model eventually, because there are so many more things we have to worry about. It's not just carbon; it's acidification and nitrogen and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah. So let's pull on that thread then, Andy, because I like where this is going, because we haven't spoken about this in a while as well, and let's bring in the AI topic, machine learning. And one of the things you said, it's really difficult actually to talk about the indirect impacts or contributors to carbon, like human factors, the entire supply chain, logistics, all these things, right? And if it's that difficult and goes into the too difficult box, is that where AI and machine learning come in to help us?
Okay.
Because if we try and look at the entire ecosystem, including the supply chain, where goods come from, every single person that touches that item along the way and what carbon they're emitting, and then all the way through to the clothes they wear, the houses they live in, and where does it start and where does it stop?
Good question. If you want to talk now, I'd be happy if people could just calculate the carbon on their materials. That would do me for a start. That would be brilliant. But realistically, if you look at PAS 2080, it treats the supply chain as a system and a system of systems. And you as the client, let's say Dale, you're the client, and Martin's one of your supply chain, and then Val's one of Martin's supply chain. You are responsible for Martin reporting his carbon properly. Martin's responsible for Val reporting his carbon properly. Okay, so you don't have the whole burden. You don't carry the whole burden. Okay, you need to spread that out. Now that's lovely when you've got contracts in place and you can spread that load out. But early days, then that's when we need some capability to do that calculation pretty quickly with robust outcomes. The only way to do that is to use project data that we can rely on, and then use some kind of machine learning engine or some kind of AI to do that. And it will have to give us a range of outcomes. It'll have to give us maybe a 3-point estimate that then we take a view on. But I think that's a great use of machine learning, or let's call it AI, because that's what everyone's calling it. That term annoys me a bit, but let's call it AI for shorthand. That's where that kind of thing will come into its own. But we need a volume of data that's reliable and robust to start that learning off. We need to show the machine learning what good looks like, and what people don't understand is you have to show the machine learning engine what bad looks like. So we don't just need good projects, we need projects that were not quite so good to teach. And I'm sure there's going to be a professor of machine learning that's going to say I'm talking bollocks, but basically you need to show this model some good and some bad and allow it to see the grey areas to bring it all together, in my opinion. But yeah, that will happen. Again, I think we're 5 years from that, not very far, but not very long away. That'll be happening.
And then is there a circular reference? Because data centers aren't exactly carbon free, are they?
No, nothing's carbon free. Okay, so this is really interesting. So one of the things I wanted to do 2 years ago was a study of carbon email, right? And we found very easily, if you if you just took off your signature block pictures and just put it in text, you save about a third of the carbon on every email you send. Okay. Again, at Sterling, I can't talk for everyone else. The data centers we use are only using green energy. They certify they're only using green energy. They're using very latest technology, so we're in low consumption of energy per megabyte of data consumed. We don't send attachments. We always send things by link so people can download them themselves rather than spamming 100 people with attachments. So you just got to think. No one's going to give you a zero carbon project. We're only ever going to get to net zero. Okay, and the only way we get to net zero is find what's left. Once we've done everything we can do and we've been as efficient as we can, there will be a carbon boundary left, and that carbon boundary we need to find a way of offsetting. But we have to do it ethically. We can't just go and buy a forest in Scotland and say, well, there you go, we've solved that particular problem. It's got to be an ethical offset, and there are some really good ethical solutions coming along. There's some quite nice ones coming along where people will track all that. But yeah, it's coming. We're never going to get zero projects, so we've got to learn to live with the offset.
Andy, is this not the premise of like the circular economy then, to effectively come up with some way of continuation and reuse of assets, products? So, for example, if the data center drives the productivity and carbon, then we need something to offset the data center, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, we do.
Is there?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really sure. Maybe we need to get some more guests on, Dale, Martin. But where would you go for that kind of information, and how do projects contribute to that? Who do we need to bring in, Andy? Let's get some people in here. Let's get some brains.
Yeah, Dale, I'll speak to you about a couple of guys that know about this stuff. It's not me, I promise you. I'm good at what I do, but I don't. It's too much for me. I don't understand that, but I do know some people that can come and talk.
I was going to say, Andy, because on that thread, then, if you think about product lifecycle or project lifecycle, then as it stands at the moment, we kind of say, a project is a unique endeavor. And it's funny because, Dale says this all the time too, but But I actually think that definition is changing because we start to talk about the impacts of the environment. We start to talk about the longevity of the asset after handover. And if we are, then we are eventually talking about some type of circular economy, right? Where the energy consumption to complete the project is also part of the project's considerations. We're trying to take on a lot, right? Is that then where maybe there's a forge of new roles that are created in the future, perhaps? Maybe AI would tell us. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I truly believe we need some really well-trained sustainability, and let's call them engineers, but whatever you want to call them, that understand how to pull the threads of modern methods of manufacture, modern materials, that we don't know. We're estimator. I'm an estimator. I don't understand all that stuff. I can tell you how much I need, and I can tell you how much of a problem you've got. But I then need to go to a specialist to say, well, technically we can do all this changing. And I think there will be new roles. I think there will be some really interesting roles. In many ways, I wish I was quite a few years younger, because I think the next 10 to 12 years, you're going to see some fabulous data and material based roles coming out, and people who will love to understand a deep understanding of material science and technology to understand these things. I think that's going to be wonderful. But I also think we need to transition our QSs and estimators to understand that they're not just number crunchers. They have to inform the rest of the specialists so the specialists can do their job. We're the heartbeat of that. We are people that can give them that data. And then we need the project controls teams to give us honest feedback where the estimates were wrong, where we overrun, why we overrun. We have to collect that change request information has to be really, really good, so that we can use it to inform and advise the next time round. And I've been banging that particular drum for 10 years, and I'm hoping we've got a bit better at it, but we'll see. But yeah, there's going to be lots of new roles, lots of really exciting stuff.
Hey, Andy, like a scenario question. And if I had like a vacuum lab, let's say we want to do a controlled experiment together, the four of us, five of us, we could have the same project inputs, one fed into an AI product, the other one fed to a project team. When we provide changes and go through the project lifecycle, a lot of what we do is, the bulk of what we do is transactional by nature, right? And
yeah,
who do you think would win out in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, and carbon if we did that scenario-based plan?
Okay. If everybody feeding data into you was being honest, the AI would win. As soon as somebody, because it's just transactional, it's just churning numbers very quickly. Okay. As soon as you need someone to look at a number and go, I don't believe that, at the moment the humans would win, because they would see that from their experience. Now we need to move that experience into the machine learning, but that takes time. So I think if everyone was honest and everyone reported the numbers honestly, robotically, let's say, then the robots would win. But people don't. People just don't. They give you numbers from last month, from next month, from this month. They go back and change last month's numbers, and it's
True.
True. It's
so if by that rationale, then if AI works out critically how to think about two things, when it doesn't know something, which it can't do yet, so there's a humility factor, and I guess there's a resourcing factor where if it's resourceful and it acts as an agent, it could understand the gaps in its own understanding and go and deploy a bot to figure that out for them. We're pretty close to that, right? I mean, I think, unless I'm reading all the hyperbole, but I think in the next year or two, as you said, it's going to be very exciting to consider that controlled experiment could actually be conducted with tangible results. And I imagine there's somewhere in the world that they're doing this or have already done it, maybe. But that's a cool prospect, yeah.
But also, are you saying, Andy, we don't need estimators anymore?
No, you do, because This is the cool thing about it. And this is why I think humans will never be out of the project controls game and estimate game. Someone gives me a drawing to estimate. The first drawing I get to estimate, probably 3 lines on a fag packet. And in the next 5 years, you won't get an AI engine to replace that person. Maybe in 10 years, you would. I think that's not unrealistic. But then the estimators, well, it will change. What we have to get used to as human beings is to drop all the mechanicalistic stuff and start doing the thinking. And what we need our young people to come out with from school and from university is a love of problem solving. Whatever the problem is, let's go and solve problems, because I don't want to be filling in spreadsheets with numbers. I don't want to be making mistakes when I drag down the spreadsheet and what I've done. I don't want to be doing that. I want to be going, that's interesting. How can I solve that problem today? And an AI can't at the moment. Again, it will come, but at the moment it can't do that jump of logic. It can do the logic to logic to logic, and it can't go 1 + 1 = 7, which a human can do. Well, a human being can look at something and go, that's what we need to do. And often they're right. Sometimes they're wrong, but often they're right. That's beautiful.
What if AI did the design as well, so you're not getting 3 lines? Then do you need an estimator?
Yeah, of course you do.
The rabbit hole.
Because unless, I mean, eventually, hopefully you won't, right? Eventually, hopefully we can all sit by the seaside, sipping beer and not worrying about the world. And then we'll probably die out as a race anyway, but that's fine, because we won't need to be here. But there were, I've seen some amazing stuff come out of the machine learning stuff. I've seen some amazing things done from the large machine language models, and that's we should. When I was at school, I got my first calculator. My teacher told me that was going to ruin mathematics. Right? It didn't, because maths is more than adding up numbers, right? It's much more interesting than just adding up numbers. AI will only enhance what we do. What we've got to be ready for, though, is to prepare the next generation for the next lot of jobs that Val was saying, the more interesting jobs that are coming, the different jobs that are coming. Not to hang on to. I mean, no one does double entry bookkeeping in a ledger anymore, right? But we've still got accountants.
Yeah,
AI could get rid of accountants tomorrow for my money, but I mean that's a different discussion.
Exactly. But I think you're right. But here's the challenge. I think up until this point, humans have been in charge of the future of any industry, right? We've kind of seen the horizon. We've said, actually, this is what we're going to need in the future. But I actually think the statement from like maybe next year onwards would be that AI would curate what the new roles would be based on what it could do, and it's probably the function of limitation, right? Because at the moment, I think we are, as humans, we're the input to all of this, right? And I think that's where school's going to be interesting, because you might have a great idea, Andy, as a QS or whatever during school, and you'll be able to test your hypotheses in a lab with an AI bot as your co-pilot, run it like literally in real time, and then come back and explain that in some type of essay or assignment or something. Very exciting stuff. But that's only going to be for a little while, and then who knows what happens after that? The singularity, perhaps something else, transcendence.
Maybe, but then I look at the good that it's doing, and I try not to worry about us becoming superfluous to the world. But many drugs now would not be in the world saving lives without AI and deep machine learning and things. And many of the cars we drive wouldn't be as efficient, and many of the I mean, even now, I mean, the aircraft. I look at the aircraft that BA Systems builds without all the knowledge bases built in there to protect the pilots. I mean, when they did some of their unmanned vehicles, they had to turn all those constraints off because they didn't need them anymore. And it was like, wow, this design has come up with this amazing design because we turned off all the constraints. That's the exciting stuff. It's going to take away a lot of constraints that we've got. It will change jobs. It will change lives. We will need potentially fewer people doing the mundane and the dull and the boring. But is that such a bad thing? We take someone, put them through 4 years of university, then give them a spreadsheet for 5 years.
What would you recommend to someone who is an aspiring QS or estimator at the moment. They're going through university. They want to get their first job in next year. Because kind of what we're saying here is, you don't really need you in about 5 years' time. 10 years top whack if the AI understands behaviors.
Yeah, that's a good
Would you still
question.
recommend it as a career?
Yes, but I think our degrees need to change. I think they need to every student going through. I'm an engineer, so let's talk about engineering. I don't know about other industries, but every engineering student needs to have at least half their course now as data, understanding data, manipulating data. We'll have to. We've taken a lot of maths out of engineering courses in this country, believe it or not. We need to put that maths back in, and it will make it more challenging for people. But they need to learn. They need to learn. Everyone's got to have a data component to what their degree is. If your degree doesn't have a data component, get to night school. Go and get yourself educated.
So are we being controversial here to say, do we still need higher education, or do we just continue school to 18, do what, more maths education, more visualization, more statistical analysis kind of built into the curriculum?
Yeah, that's a hard. I mean, I left school at 16. I never went to university or anything. So, but I think we need to teach much more critical thinking. The best lessons I learned were critical thinking. Yeah, you might know something. You might think you know something. Okay, let's go and explore that. And I just think we used to have a very broad curriculum. And then we narrowed it down, and I think the way we test, I'm going to be very controversial now, the way we test school kids, and that is completely stupid. We should be teaching them on creativity and their ability to solve critical problems, not on can they memorize a formula for Young's modulus of elasticity. I still remember the bloody thing. And that was like 40 years ago, because it was drummed into me that I must know this thing. I don't need to know that now. I've got an AI bot that will go and do that for me.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. I think
Let's change it.
there's a lot, Andy. I mean,
on.
I've been reading a lot about people using ChatGPT to get past their assignments and get past exam. There are so many different tools coming out almost every day for cheating the system, and that may help actually drive the change in the system. It won't come from the education, because that's too systemic, right? It'll actually come from the fact that they can't keep up. But that is fun in a disruptive way. But I don't think we're going to solve it today.
Trust me, to get a pass on a technical paper using ChatGPT, and I've tested this myself, you have to put in so much information, you might as well write the essay. So, if you're doing some kind of, I don't know, other course that's not so technical, and there's a lot of literature about inside the model, then you can get amazing stuff out. If I've got some challenging emails to write, I will put my email through GPT and say, make this a bit softer, and it takes the hard edges off my email that I've got to send. So I think that's a great tool. But if you're doing a technical degree, it's highly unlikely that they would have built the software with the literature that you need to reference to pass your exams. So please try. In fact, if you told me the things you put into the model and then showed me the output and it was good, I would probably pass you, because that's smart. You're outsourcing the labor to a machine that doesn't care how long it takes. But I'm not an academic, and I don't do marking, so please don't tell me it's my fault, please. Yeah, but why not, Val? Why not? Who cares? We will have to change our education model.
We do, I think, because I think, as what Martin was alluding to there, we typically, if you look back in the history of education, why people go to universities to learn a particular knowledge, skill, domain, so they can apply that outside of after university and get a leg up and earn money, more money, and etc., etc. And if we're going, well, the jobs as we know them today are going to drastically change. Let's not say they're going to not exist. Let's say there still be jobs. Then we're educating people today potentially for jobs that won't exist, which is an interesting thought. But then what do we educate them for if we don't know what those jobs will be? So it's an interesting conundrum, and that's where Val's like, kind of, well, let AI tell us what those jobs will be. But we got to also put a little bit of a disclaimer here, I think, because we're talking predominantly around machine learning,
Yes.
and that's only one type of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So we just got to put that disclaimer on here, because you talk about creativity, you talk about critical thinking. Now, AI is creative. AI can substitute critical thinking. One of the things I'm coming to, because if you think about it, probably about a year ago, not even as much as that, we're talking about, you know what, there's no degree for project controls professionals. And now we're going, do we even need project controls professionals with the way things are going, right? It's happening so fast. And so maybe, just maybe, we have to teach kids to have fun as adults. Because we don't have fun anymore. We just work our asses off and try and earn money. And what happened to the fun?
Do you know what I think we kill in the children too early is curiosity. Okay, if we could have a degree in curiosity, that would lead to fun because you would be curious about things. And I think AI, in my understanding of it, and again, I like your disclaimer because that's really important, but I don't think AI can be curious. We can tell it to go and look at something, but it can't just be curious about something like the human mind could be. And I think we lose curiosity very quickly. I love the way kids ask like 9 whys, why? And then you answer, well, why? And then you answer, and then, well, eventually you go, "Look, just because it is, right? Okay, that's just, you have to stop." But that curiosity will lead to more interesting jobs and more interesting. I mean, Val, you were saying earlier that you've been in, you've done projects in manufacturing, you've done projects in mining, you've done projects in everything. Okay. You're not an expert in any of those fields. You're an expert in every field because you're curious about how it works and you know what you want to do, and you know that fundamentally what we do in projects and estimating is the same in all of these fields. You have to learn the lexicon of that particular new industry, but that's all. That's cool.
And
Very cool.
I think we're saying for now that's relevant, but if we talk about machine learning and AI in general, then it depends on the biases or the information that's programmed with. To be fair, you could say, I want to train my AI to be like Andrew in every facet, his creativity, his experience, what projects he worked on, how he approaches problems, how he thinks about the life philosophically. I could, to be fair, and I'm not the expert in the room or in the world, but even at my novice degree of understanding, I think I could build something relatively good that would get you pretty excited, Andrew. Imagine the same tone of voice, the same way you write emails, the same humor to some degree. Because there is this premise that like we love to say that humans are unique because it makes us feel good, and you have these deep and meaningful questions. And I think creativity is a great one to kind of continue education, and curiosity is a great one too. And it's all linked to philosophy. It's like the way you think about life, challenging the way we conduct ourselves in life as well. But I think we're going to have to share that space with AI and a synthetic product at some point, which is a very interesting concept. And whether it makes our lives better or not, I'm not sure. Yeah.
But it's not new. It's not new. We used to walk everywhere, and then we shared our lives with horses, and then we shared our lives with cars, and then we shared our lives with aircraft, and then we shared our lives with space vehicles. We've always had to move a little bit to allow technology to come into our lives. This is a big change, I have to be honest, and it is a major change. But what did we do before the television was switched on in the corner of the room? Oh, we listened to the radio. Well, what did we do before the radio was switched on in the corner of the room? Oh, we had a piano, and we've always been moving forward, and I think we're right to be cautious because I think there could be some unscrupulous people out there that can manipulate what you see in very strange and interesting ways. But our whole progression is based on us moving away so technology can take the strain. And we can go do something else. I don't want to go back to pulling hand carts with vegetables on. I mean, that's really not what I want to do, And I think that's how the kids will think about AI. Well, why is Andy talking about the good old days when we had spreadsheets? What's he on about? Why does he actually want to go back to that kind of hardware? I like what Dad said. Let's go and have some fun. Let's just go and hit the beach and let the machine do the work.
Well, Andy, I don't know if you were reading between the lines with what Val was saying, but myself, Val, and Martin are all artificially generated on the show. You're actually talking to AI bots at the moment. So, yeah.
I figured that because your jokes were better.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
We did program the AI to tell better jokes than we normally tell. But no, look, it's been fascinating, and I'm just looking at the time. It's gone so fast and fascinating. I always knew having you on would be a really interesting chat, but we don't want to let you go just yet, Andy. You listen to the show. We know we've got a special feature at the end called Fiverr, and we do have Machine Gun Martin at the ready to fire some questions at you. So over to you, Martin.
Yep. So if you're ready, let's make a start. Number 1, biggest misconception about AI.
That it's going to replace humans and make our lives worse.
Are leaders born or made?
A bit of both, nurture and nature.
What would be your book recommendation to our listeners?
Oh, that's a really hard one. Anything that's not anything that's a subject you've never read about before.
Number 4, yes or no, will a project planner still be required in 10 years' time?
Yes.
And finally, please be clean. What was your last ChatGPT question?
My last one was, what was the turnover of a specific company?
Isn't that a Google search?
It's easy on chat. It's so much quicker because it gives you the last. Normally, I just ask for the last 4 years of published accounts, and it goes and gets it for me. In fact, I didn't use chat. I used Copilot.
Yeah, there's so many. There's Claude. There's all sorts. So lots of places, lots of large language models, generative AI, large language models that we can use these days. So, yeah, Andy, look, it's been awesome having you on the pod. I'm glad that we've taken our offline conversations online now and recorded it. You always, give your open, honest views, which we really appreciate, and I know listeners will appreciate as well. So thank you so much for your time on the show. Like I say, it's one I think that will intrigue the listeners, one that will get them thinking, but I think also one that, because we futurescaped a little bit there, we'll be able to tell whether or not some of the crystal ball gazing that particularly Val, I guess, has done will come true or not. But before we let you go, any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, there's a couple. The first one is, this is what I've said is what I think. If you think I'm wrong, don't get annoyed. Come and help me understand where I need to change my views. That would be really useful. And very happy. You can find me on LinkedIn. And the last one is just stay curious, stay interested. If you're in a place and you're bored, get out. Just stay doing stuff that's really good, really interesting. That would be my thoughts for finishing up, really, Dale.
Amazing thoughts, and I think amazing advice for those listening as well. Val, any final thoughts from you?
No, thanks, Andy. Thanks for swirling around a few of our crazy ideas and entertaining them as well. I think it's a great conversation, and I like the fact that we go back and forth because it isn't set in stone. No one knows the future, but I really appreciate your thoughts and opinions, mate.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you on the show. So, folks, that is the end of this episode. But remember, if you do like what you've heard, please do help us pay it forward and share a link to this episode on your favorite social media. Once again, a massive thank you to our guest, Andrew Langridge. And thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me, Val, and Martin, it's bye for now.